I'm Shauna Rosner, your host of In-House Counsel Chronicles, a podcast designed to chronicle the career journeys of in-house counsel so we can collectively learn from their unique paths to their in-house position, the challenges they've overcome, the milestones they have celebrated, and how they're shaping the future of law in today's rapidly changing business environment. Today, my guest is Sara Horvath. Sara graduated from Boston College of Law in 2005. She started her legal career with Sidley Austin and moved in-house with Whirlpool Corporation, where she started as legal counsel North American region. And when she left over 10 years later, she was VP and GC of North America and KitchenAid Small Appliances. Sara has been with Ranpak for the last 4.5 years and holds the title of Executive Vice President, Chief Legal and HR Officer. Welcome to the podcast, Sara.
Thanks, Shauna. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I wanted to first ask you, did you always see yourself as an in-house attorney?
I don't think so. I don't know if I even when I first went to law school, I'm not sure I even understood kind of all of the different career paths that attorneys could take. I worked for a couple of years after graduating from undergrad before I went to law school. So I had a little bit of exposure to kind of the business environment. I worked in sales and marketing for 3 years. And during law school, I had in mind that I wanted to kind of be a corporate attorney, a transactional attorney, but I think that's really the only thing I knew for sure. I did clerk after my first year just to confirm upon advice from all of my litigation friends that I should just try it to make sure that I really didn't want to do it. So I worked for a judge after my first year of law school, and it was a great experience, but I confirmed that I did not want to be a litigator. So I did know during law school that I wanted to do transactional work, corporate work, but I don't think I knew at that point, certainly, that ultimately I would want to and kind of flourish in my career as an in-house lawyer. So I think I kind of did what most people do at that point, which is go to the big firm. And that's how I ended up at Sidley.
And tell us about how you made that move and why from Sidley when you did.
Yeah, sure. So first, I had a great experience at Sidley. It was a really great training ground for me. I had exposure to lots of different types of work there in the corporate team, which was great. I think after a couple years, I realized that it was probably not long term for me because we were starting our family. And like I said, I was in the corporate team doing, A deals, mostly work that was unpredictable. I loved the work, but it was unpredictable in terms of the schedule, and it didn't really kind of line up with how I saw myself being involved with my family in the longer term. So I thought maybe I should, you know, talk to some in-house people or people that had made that move at the time and see what that was like. So started exploring in-house opportunities at that point about 5 years in, and the opportunity at Whirlpool came up. I really enjoyed the people I met when I interviewed there and ended up going there and ended up being there for 11 years.
That's a long tenure.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
Tell us about your experience there. I know you started in one position, ended in a different one.
Yeah, I think when I joined, I remember thinking, how interesting can appliances be after working on kind of big M&A deals and other kind of exciting projects for lots of different clients at Sidley. I wasn't really sure what it was going to be like to have, one client and be in-house. I ended up finding the business of appliances really interesting. My first role, as you mentioned, was a legal counsel in the North America commercial team. So I supported the sales organization in North America and the service organization. So on the sales side, worked with our sales managers and account managers to try to sign agreements with big retailers, so Home Depot, Lowe's, Best Buy, those big retailers, but also kind of small mom and pop appliance companies that lots of towns have, and everything in between. So that was interesting. And then on the service side, we worked to support the service team signing agreements with all of the huge network of independent service companies that service the appliances in people's homes. Um, so that was a fascinating business to learn and understand. It was something you just never really think about before you're immersed in it. And so that was my first role at Whirlpool, and then ended up over, as we've talked over the course of 11 years, having a variety of different experiences, kind of, making my way through the legal team, working with lots of different business partners, lots of different departments around the company, and also globally. I got a lot of international exposure working with, ended up doing some mergers in Europe and in Asia. So had lots of different opportunities to develop my career at Whirlpool. The second to last role I had there was Chief Compliance Officer. And up to that point, I was kind of, a business lawyer, business partner. I really enjoyed kind of helping grow the business, feeling like I was really part of getting products out there, getting the, message out there about Whirlpool products. And I did not want to take a compliance role. I sort of saw compliance as the police. And I knew that a lot of my business colleagues saw compliance that way. I was not excited about moving away from being a business lawyer. They explained why they thought I would be the right person for the role at the time. The compliance program was maturing, and they really needed someone who knew the business well to help operationalize the compliance concepts within the business. And that was why they felt like I was the right person for the job at the time. I sort of begrudgingly agreed to take the role because I thought, maybe I'll learn something. That ended up being a really good decision. I learned a ton. I was in that role for 2 years. It's very operational, very different kind of role than, the business lawyer role. Learned a ton about kind of operating a program. Our compliance program across 90,000 employees at that time. We refreshed the code of ethics that hadn't been refreshed in years at Whirlpool, and that was a huge campaign. So it was, again, very different. I learned how to think differently, how to influence across the organization. I was ready to leave that role after a couple years, though, and thankfully I had the opportunity to move back into the business as the GC for Whirlpool's North America business and the KitchenAid small appliances business, which was one of the kind of most coveted roles at the time. It was a really fun business. It was the largest business at Whirlpool, and a really great leadership team there as well. I took that role in January of 2020. So as you might imagine, my vision for what that role was going to be ended up being a little different than what it was, because a couple of months after I was in the role, we were in COVID. And at that point, just trying to figure out, like everybody, how to keep our plants open, how to keep our employees safe, kind of managing the patchwork of regulations that we had here in the US, state by state. Could we even send service people across state lines, those who lived near state lines, things like that?
Yeah, I bet that was quite unexpected, but
It
learned a lot
was,
from that as
we
well,
did.
right?
I mean, I think everybody did, right? There was no playbook. I worked very closely with our HR team because obviously one of our top priorities was keeping the employees safe. So we worked really closely together, developing protocols for our plants, and had a lot of really great working sessions and projects with the HR team during that time.
Let's talk about when you left there. What was kind of the impetus for that? And how did you land where you are now?
Sure. Our general counsel was retiring, and Whirlpool thought it was the best thing to do for them to look outside for the person to backfill her, even though there were, several of us who thought we were ready for that role. So I felt like it was a good opportunity for me to kind of reassess my opportunities and whether I was still developing at Whirlpool, and started kind of exploring opportunities outside. This opportunity at Ranpak came up, and it was, very, very different size company. Like I mentioned, when I left Whirlpool, there were around 90,000 employees. We have about 900 employees here at Ranpak. Ranpak is still a global company, which was something that I was looking for, a public company. A different industry. I was really interested in the industry. I was really interested in the industry, packaging, and then also the sustainability angle. So we are all in the paper-based sustainable packaging, trying to have customers replace their bubble wrap and air pillows, plastic air pillows with paper-based sustainable solutions for in-the-box packaging. So I was really interested in that, and I thought that was, kind of a good mission to connect to. And the company seemed, kind of in growth mode. I thought it would be not a startup. So the company at the time was almost 50 years old, but it was a newly public company and kind of really trying to get in growth mode. It behaved a little bit at the time like a startup, even though it was 50 years old. Still sometimes behaves like a startup, actually, even though I've been here several years. So I just could feel that it was going to be a very different experience than my experience at Whirlpool. And that was what I was looking for, something different, that I could develop different skills, kind of learn how to work within a different system, different people, all of that. We I picked up my family, and we moved from Southwest Michigan to Cleveland, Ohio.
Well, being a Clevelander, I'm glad you're here making an impact here. I know you shared with me that part of the product, it might come in my Amazon boxes, which do come to my house with some frequency. And I just put some of that into the recycling bin this week. So I know exactly what you do, and glad that that's replacing some of the plastic. Tell me about, if you ever imagine when you were going to make a transition, that it would be to another public company. Was that really important to you?
So this was going to be my first, chief legal officer role. It was my first kind of, big seat, right? The first time I was in the top job, and I'd worked at a public company for the last 11 years, and I was very familiar with the kind of public company side of that in some of the various roles that I had at Whirlpool. I felt like I had some opportunities to, at private companies, but I really wanted the first role, my first experience, to be at a public company so that I could kind of establish myself as chief legal officer of a public company. How important that is, I didn't really get advice that was going to be important. For me, it was just something I wanted to try to do. And like it is smaller, but all the public company aspects are still present, and I knew that would be a challenge for me in this role with a very small legal team. So I did focus on public company roles, and I felt like I was ready for that role at the time.
That makes sense. And you have an HR function as part of your position. Tell me a little bit about that. What do you do as an HR function as an attorney, and how do you manage that along with the other legal positions that are part of your title now?
That's a good question. I took over the HR function about 3 or 4 months in. So I had a couple months to kind of get settled on the legal side, and then HR kind of came onto my plate at that point. And it is not just the legal side of HR; it is the whole HR function. So everything from performance management, talent management, payroll, compensation, planning, employee experience, coaching our employees, everything. It's sort of the whole scope of HR. And again, I think my training as on the operational side when I was in the compliance role, and familiarity with some of the HR processes from some of the other roles that I had at Whirlpool helped prepare me for this. I definitely was not an HR expert when I stepped into this role, and thankfully I have very strong HR professionals who are sort of my directors in each of our regions that lead the HR teams in each of our regions, who report to me and are sort of part of the global HR leadership team and help develop that strategy overall. I've learned I've learned a lot over the last several years on the HR side, and I enjoy it. It is hard sometimes to balance my own time and how much time I'm allocating to the priority of the day, but I think we're a small company. We have really lean teams. And I think there are a lot of companies our size and maybe even larger where the functions are linked in this way. So I think it's been really interesting. And like I said, thankfully I have HR professionals who are, kind of helping guide the HR strategy.
Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on being a utility player versus a specialist, because I think we now know you are a utility player, and how this has played out in your career.
When I mentor junior lawyers, this is one of the things we end up talking about a lot of times. I I didn't really set out with a plan to become a utility player. I'm not sure anybody does that, but I just found in each of my jobs at each of the places that I've worked, Sidley, Whirlpool, and here, that it just sort of ends up that way. And I think maybe it's just because I'm willing to kind of pitch in and help projects that might not be within my immediate wheelhouse, or there's a lot of things that fall in between groups, and um it's nobody knows kind of where it's supposed to be, and someone has to pick it up. So I feel like at Sidley, I ended up doing that when we needed somebody to work on corporate governance or governance advising of some of our clients, or executive comp, or reviewing proxies, or doing some of the things that were in between the big deals. And I found partners that I liked working with and would help on those types of things when maybe others would say, no, I don't really want to do that. And that gave me a really broad experience. Same thing at Whirlpool when, there was a need for someone to kind of step into an M&A role in the legal team because I had some experience doing it. I raised my hand for that and ended up building out the whole M&A function at Whirlpool in the legal team. So I think over time, I just developed that way. And I think it has definitely helped me, the sort of broad scope, being able to pick something up that I'm not familiar with and figure it out. It has definitely helped me in my role today.
So I think you shared with me a quote. I think it's something you have like up even behind you in your office, that I think relates to this being a utility player. What is that quote again?
Yeah, it's something somebody got me at one point over the last several years. It just is a little sign that says everything is figure outable. And I think because I've had these experiences where I you know I work on projects that might not be in my exact specialty, and I have to kind of figure it out. And the experience that I've had just, advising people over the years in my various roles, not get too wound up about things. And, inevitably every single day someone brings me something that I might not know exactly how to deal with. So we just have to figure it out. And I always say, we'll figure it out. So everything is figure outable, I think, is definitely kind of my mantra. And, we don't need to get too wound up about it. Even if it's something we haven't experienced before or not sure how to handle, we'll figure it out.
I love that. I'll have to find that quote. You that I do quotes weekly on LinkedIn. I might have to borrow that one. I want to shift gears for a minute and talk about work life integration. We talked about this before. You are a general counsel of a public company, a mom of three kids, three sons. How have you managed work life integration?
I don't really know if there's like no silver bullet, right? There's definitely no magic wand. Day by day, I guess, is the best answer I have. I have three teenage boys now at this point. I have a very, very supportive and actively involved husband who has been, you know, actively a very active parent and actively involved from the very beginning. So I think that has definitely helped a lot, but it's not like we've figured out some magic way to make it work. I mean, it is really, really day by day, week by week. When the boys were younger, uh, and none of them could drive, we would look at our calendar on Sunday evenings and literally have a logistics meeting and figure out, okay, look at the next week. How are we going to get everybody where they need to be every day? Am I going to leave early? Are you going to leave early? Or do we need to ask the neighbor or ask another parent on the soccer team? Or do I need to ask my mom to drive up? She lived 30 minutes away at the time. So just we would go day by day and map out in advance how we were going to get people where they need to be. and hopefully nothing changed. And if something changed, then we'd have to pivot in the moment, right? So that was the administrative way of handling it, just like planning in advance. How are we going to get people where they needed to be? We really tried to give the kids opportunities to, do different things, play different sports, be part of different activities. So we tried not to let our work limit the opportunities for them. So we did really, like, thankfully, we lived in Southwest Michigan. We lived in a community that was very tight. So there was always another family going, where our kids were going as well. And we took other kids with us a lot too. So shared rides. And, it's not easy. That's for
No,
sure. It's not for the faint of heart.
no.
Still, even yeah, as you know, even as they get older, it's not easy, but just a lot of communication. My husband and I talk a lot about, about the kids and about making sure, we have everything covered, and keeping the lines of communication open with the kids as well. And just kind of, like I said, day by day, week by week.
Absolutely. As a mom of four boys, I totally get it. And communication is key. I think one other thing you shared with me when we spoke earlier was not only do you do that plan weekly, but you have a yearly check in, right?
Exactly. So when we moved to Cleveland from Michigan 4 years ago, my husband stopped working. So the whole time I was at Whirlpool, we were both working full-time jobs. And when we moved and I took this role, the kids were like, ages where that it was kind of hard to leave there. And I mean, they'd lived in Michigan most of their lives. They were very comfortable in their environment there, and we were pulling them out of it. Our oldest was going into 8th grade at the time. We had a son who's going to the 6th grade at the time, and a 3rd grader. And so at the time we decided, why don't you just get everyone settled, right? Let's take a year. The first year we're here, and you're going to focus on getting us settled, getting the house settled, getting the kids settled, just, making sure they're transitioning well. And so we said, we'll take that first year. And he was going to focus on getting everyone settled. So after the first year, we kind of did a check-in and said, okay, how are we feeling? Do you want to go back to work? Are you happy doing what you're doing? The kids were doing great. They transitioned really well. And, I think at that time he said, honestly, I don't know how we would get everything done if I went back to work. And we kind of talked about it. Okay, but do you want to go back to work? Because we can figure that out. Just like I said, everything is figure outable. So if you want to go back, we can figure out how to make that happen. He was very involved in the school, still very involved in the school, booster club, PTO, all of those things. And I think he enjoyed being involved in that way. And the kids were doing great. And so we said, okay, let's just keep doing what we're doing. And so every August we do the same kind of check-in. How are you doing? Are you still feeling like you're enjoying what you're doing? Like I said, he continues to get involved in different things and stay involved. So he's very busy, and I think the kids are flourishing, and he's as of the last check-in, still doing well and enjoying what he's doing, and I'm feeling super supported in my role. So it seems to be working for us, and until it doesn't work anymore, and then we'll figure out what we need to do. It was an interesting transition when he decided to stay home. It was hard for me. I think I've shared this with you. It was hard for me to give up control of some of those things that I always did for the kids, especially when he wasn't necessarily doing them the same way I would have done them. So we had, I had to go through my own transition and realize he was doing it differently, but still doing it well. And it was just his way. And so once we kind of all transitioned into our new roles, I think we realized this is great. Everyone's doing well. Everyone's thriving. So we're going to keep it like it is until we decide something needs to change. But it was an interesting transition to go through as a couple, interesting as a family. Everyone kind of had to get used to not only just moving in our new environment, new job, new school, but kind of our new kind of family dynamic.
And I'm so glad that you brought up that it was hard to give up the control, doing things the way that you're used to doing it. I think it's so important for people to hear that. And I don't think women share that enough when they're in a situation like yours, where the spouse is the one taking over
Hmm.
kind of the day to day. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
I want
sure,
to
of course.
end today by asking you if you were to go back in time and give advice to yourself after taking the bar exam, what would it be?
I think it would be to think about what you're interested in and try to work on things that are interesting to you. I think a lot of people, or at least I was very focused on at that time, kind of doing what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to go to a big firm. I was supposed to, bill X amount of hours and try to work on, you know, big big deals, and rather than try to think about what types of things do I like to work on? What types of things are interesting to me? I think I realized sort of later that I like to work on certain things and over others, and maybe, certain types of deals were more interesting to me than others. And I found when I came in house that I really love learning about the business, like how the business runs. And I think that's why I enjoy being, on in house and on the business side. But I didn't really focus on that early on. But I wasn't focused on what was interesting to me. I was focused on what am I supposed to do? What's my next step in this plan that someone else has laid out for me, right? Rather than what's my plan, or what do I want to work on? What do I find interesting? So I think the advice would be just to start to think about what you find interesting as you are presented with different projects. You might have to do some that aren't that interesting, but at least think about for later, this was more interesting than that. And so maybe I should focus on getting more of that kind of work.
I think that's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing everything you did during our episode today. It was great having you on. Thanks, Sarah.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was really fun.